Welcome to a Little About Life podcast with your host Lance Hatton, and this is where I talk about different topics in life and in the world through a biblical perspective with a Christ-centered mindset. This podcast is made to help give you guys a community where you feel seen, heard, and loved, and where you can grow in your faith. Let's get to the show. What's up, guys? It's your host Lance, and I am finally back with another episode of A Little About Life. Man, I know it's been a while. I know it has been a long time, and I think the last time I dropped an episode was 2021, I believe. 2021. That is crazy. Yeah, so it's been a while. It's been almost a year and a half, closing on 2 years, and I haven't dropped the episode in a while, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of update before we get started. My last episode, I was in college still. I was a senior in college, and I was playing basketball. And I ended up graduating that spring. I moved back home to Florida, and I started teaching. Started teaching at a school. I teach middle school Bible and PE, and I started a nonprofit organization, like a mentoring and outreach organization program. So, that's pretty much been it. My life has been just like on go and a fast paced ever since my last episode has dropped. So, I definitely have been feeling like, I've been wanting to get back to it, but it's been really tough with my schedule and with all my responsibilities. But I do feel like God has been calling me back to the show, the podcast, and wanting to get it right, get it going. So, man, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be back, man. I hope that you guys can just get life out of this show and get truth, and just, I hope that I can point you guys in the right direction, and just help you guys grow in your faith with Christ. Man, let's get started. Today, I just wanted to share my testimony with you guys. I wanted to share really just how God changed my life, how the Lord really just flipped my life upside down and changed my whole world around, and I'll just give you guys a little bit of a background. I grew up in a church, played baseball and basketball all my life. My parents are divorced, but both of them, were in the church as well. So regardless of which house I was at, I was always in the church. I just really didn't have a relationship with God, though. I didn't really know who Jesus was. I just heard about him. I called myself a Christian. I had the famous Philippians 4:13 quote memorized. That was like the only Bible verse I knew, which was Philippians 4:13. I didn't really know Jesus, man. I wasn't living my life for him. But I was a solid kid. I was a pretty good kid, I would guess. Got in trouble here and there, but was a pretty good kid, man. Very fortunate to have parents who did keep me grounded and keep me just like involved and stuff like that, But I definitely seen some things. I lost some people. I grew up in, kind of a rough area. Like in some parts of my life, I had friends that grew up in like a really rough area, So, I experienced a lot, and my dad definitely just made sure that I was straight, make sure I was in line, made sure that I was who I was supposed to be, So I had a pretty good childhood. Like I said, played baseball growing up. Then I ended up playing basketball. And here's where my testimony kind of starts is my senior year of high school. I actually transferred high schools to play basketball at a Christian school. And it wasn't because I wanted to, develop my relationship with God or anything like that. It's really just, I just wanted to stand out, and I really wanted to further my chances of, making it to college and playing, some high level basketball. So my dad and I, we sat down, we talked, and we thought it was best for me to transfer to this small little Christian school. And, like I said, I didn't really have a relationship with God, but the Christian school was a culture shock. Going to that school, seeing how they took their faith serious. I was diving into Christianity. I had a Bible class where my professor was very just profound, and he was very knowledgeable on just the Christian faith. So I got to learn a little bit of why Christianity was, if I were to believe in anything, it would be Christianity. So I got to learn a lot being at that school, and I got to see other people who were living their life for Christ. Not everybody was, but I did get a select few who were just like on fire for the Lord, and it was just like a shock for me, and it changed my perspective of God and just like what it meant to live a life for Christ. But I didn't really take it too serious. I just knew that it woke me up. It woke me up a little bit. But yeah, after that, I ended up going to college. And as I was in college, my dad always told me, he's like, man, you need to find a church, man. You need to find a Christian community. You need to find a group of friends that also believe in the Lord. So I didn't really take it too serious, to be honest. But I was like, all right, I'm going to listen to my dad. I'm going to find like a Christian group. Find a Christian group. And I found a group called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And I was able to meet my mentor, who was like the staff on our campus, and he was just a devoted Christian, man of God, and he really just like took me in under his wing, like turned me into his like little brother. And it was just like kind of different for me because like as I got to college, being a basketball player, having a big head, I'm just like, man, I don't really need this Christian stuff. Like I got everything I want in life, but he definitely challenged me, like he was just like invited me to Bible studies and stuff like that. I never been to a Bible study at all in my life until, was that 4.5 years ago? And I was like, all right, I'll give Bible studies a shot, but like I said, I was in college living for the Lord, just living in sin, not really knowing too much about why sin was sin, why it was wrong. Like I knew a little bit, I tried to set boundaries, but it never worked. My surroundings weren't the best, so it wasn't until my sophomore year where my life started to change. And the reason why I say that is because I ended up getting into a relationship, a worldly relationship, and I just chose to live in sin. And yeah, that was one aspect of it, but also before we get into that, I was going through a bit of depression and frustration, and I had like anger holding on because I had been hurt by two people in my life. One that was really close to me, one that wasn't so close to me, and I just been holding on to anger. And then basketball wasn't going well for me, so like I said, I played basketball, for a little while, and I had a chip on my shoulder, and it was a pretty large chip. I had an uncle that played Division I ball at Alabama, and then ended up going to the NBA and playing 9 years at the NBA. And I also had a father who was like amazing in sports growing up, and I heard all about it, so this chip was really heavy. I had a lot of friends that played Division I football, and I knew a few friends that played Division I basketball as well, and I ended up going to Division III school. So my mindset the whole time is, all right, I'll play my year or two here and then go transfer to play Division I, but that didn't happen. I just didn't really get the opportunity that I felt like I deserved, and I just feel like God had other plans. But it was very frustrating because, like I said, I had a chip on my shoulder. I had something to prove, I felt like to my family, to my friends, to everybody, and I worked really hard to achieve it. But basketball just wasn't, going well for me. And like I said, it really made me depressed, being away from home, feeling like I'm wasting my time. It sent me down a very bad mental place. And I just wasn't eating really much. I wasn't hanging out with friends. I was listening to like sad music in the shower. Like I remember my roommate, one of my guys, Elijah, he would be like, bro, you okay? And I was just going through so much and just trying to find something to make me happy. It was partying, women, nothing that really made me happy. And one day my mentor, he was telling me that I need to go see a therapist. He was telling me, he was like, man, you need to get some help. I feel like, for men, it's really tough for us to get the courage and go get help, but I feel like you need it. So for me, I was just like, man, I'm a black man, we don't really do that help stuff. So I went up, I did go to the mental health like facility, But I just like looked at the door and I just walked away. I'm like, bro, I ain't doing this. I'm gonna be all right, you know. But my depression didn't go away. So one day my mentor was just like, man, I'm gonna pray for you. Him and his friend, they prayed for me in the middle of the cafe in college, and they were just praying that I can give my anger to God and just let the what was holding me to be depressed like and angry go. And I was just like praying and just listening to them, and I was like, all right, God, I give it to you, I let it go. And craziest thing happened. I never felt God's presence in my life. I never felt the Holy Spirit, but it literally felt like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders at that moment. And I, like, not even like choosing to, I began to bawl my eyes out and cry because I realized I've been holding on to this anger and it had been like destroying my life, that it had been hurting my heart, So that is when, once that happened, I was like, all right, God, I think that this is serious and I think you're real, and I'm gonna give you a chance, because I never felt the Holy Spirit. I'm crying, bawling my eyes out in the middle of the cafeteria in front of like all these college students, and they're praying for me, just like rubbing my back, just making sure I'm okay. So that after that day, that's when I was like, all right, Dom was my mentor, my guy, my best friend. I was like, Dom, I'm gonna take it serious. Like whatever I gotta do, I'll show up to events and stuff like that. And I quickly became a leader of the student ministry organization. And at that time, I didn't know the Bible that well. I had read like all of Luke, and like Dom had like made me read it. He didn't make me read it, but he encouraged me to read it, and we walked through it together. And after I read through Luke, he was just like, Lance, how you feel about like doing a Bible study? And I was just like, man, I just came to faith, like for real. Like, I'm not ready for no Bible study. And he was like, nah, Lance, you're ready. And then he made me like draw like my friends and all my connections on campus. And he was like, man, like you can impact people on this campus. You can help people know the Lord. And at the time I was like super scared, but I remember doing my first Bible study, and I was just like, man, like the way people received it. I had like 15, maybe 16, 17 people at my first Bible study, and they all received it so well. It was unbelievable. I'm like, Lance, you did a great job. How long have you been doing this? And it was like, man, I don't even know the Bible that well, But what Dom did was he challenged me, and it made me dive into the Bible in ways I never had before, So I wouldn't go into Bible studies unprepared. Like I would be like reading and studying and just walking with God, praying my way. It was really the Holy Spirit that led me through it. Like God did not let me fail that, because, if I would have tried it, on my own with my pride, I would have failed, So that's when I like really started to take the Lord a little bit more serious. And give my life to him. However, I had just gotten a relationship at around that same time, like while I was in depression, didn't make any sense, but I got into a relationship because I was looking for, comfort and love. And I got into like a 2-year relationship at my sophomore year. I was like, I believe that was my sophomore year. And it wasn't for the Lord, it was for myself. It was to gratify myself, and I was living in sin, and we actually lived together. And during that time, in the beginning, before I was walking with the Lord, I didn't really feel any conviction about what I was doing, living in sin. But once I really started to, walk with the Lord, and people started to see me as a leader, and they would ask me questions about God, and they would look at me as like a mentor. Other college students, I started to feel the conviction, and I was like wrestling with just like moving out and trying to break it off and really just grow my relationship with God. But I was like really living in habitual sin. And like I said, at first I didn't care, but the conviction is what made me, because I did want to please the Lord, but I would feel convicted, living in sin and having a place with my girlfriend at the time. So that was just like a challenge for me, and we didn't end up breaking it off until about 2 years later. And this is where my relationship with God starts to go on a whole new level. So I end up graduating college, still being a leader in the student ministry group and helping lead people to Jesus. But like I said, I was still hypocritical, like I would live a two-faced life. I would go to parties, I would smoke weed, I would drink a lot, and I would, just, be with women. And I just wasn't living a life for the Lord. And when I graduated college, my plan was still basketball, basketball. My college career was not the way that I expected it to go. And I was very frustrated with God. I'm like, God, I worked so hard and I've dedicated my life to this, but for some reason, I didn't succeed at it. I didn't become the man that I thought I was going to be, and I felt like a failure, really. I felt like a failure. But what I didn't know is that wasn't a part of God's plan. So after I graduated, I moved back home to Florida and I lived with my mom, and that was one thing that I was a little bit frustrated about as well, is like coming home and live with my parents after I graduated college. I told myself, I'm like, man, you're going to be successful, and I felt like a failure, but what God was doing is God had to isolate me and separate me for the life that I was living, so when I moved home, I didn't have any friends. All my friends that I had growing up, they all were still in college and they all moved away. And all my college friends were still in St. Louis. So I was home by myself, and I moved back in May, and I was jobless from May, June, July. So almost 3 months where I was jobless, and I was like kind of frustrated with God because this wasn't a part of my plan. But I was like, the only thing I really know, since I don't have friends, I don't have basketball, is church, and the Lord and God. So I was like, all right, God, I'm going to take you serious. And I just threw myself in the church, and I threw myself around community, and I tried to make friends, and I ended up meeting my current girlfriend in church, and really God showed me how to depend on him. When I didn't have anything, and when God changed up everything, he showed me how to depend on him. And he changed my whole perspective of life, because my whole plans and my life was really about me, proving people wrong and trying to be the best version of me that I can be. And when all the doors for that were closed, when I was frustrated with God, when I was angry with God, God showed me his will for my life. And it was really to help people and to be a mentor. And I end up being a teacher. And I go from wanting to be a basketball player and be this great athlete for the world to see, to being a teacher. I was a math teacher at first, now I'm a Bible teacher, and it wasn't a part of my plan. I didn't really, have like a want to help kids, but like those 3 months I was in deep prayer. I fasted like almost every month, and God revealed to me that my purpose here on earth was not just to be here for Lance, but it was really to be here for the people around me. And what I didn't mention is I'm like the father figure in my household. My mom is a single mother. I live with my mom right now. Me and my dad are still close, but I'm like the father figure in my household. My siblings look at me as the father figure. Their dad, my stepfather, passed away about 11, 12 years ago from cancer. And that was a big reason why I decided to move back. It's because I felt like God wanted me to be here for my family. And in doing that, I realized that, man, I'm supposed to be a role model. I'm supposed to be a father figure. I'm supposed to be a guide for other people that didn't have a father figure and role model. Like, that was just where my heart was. And a little bit after I started teaching, I actually started a community outreach organization. It's called Built to Lead, and it's really just to help the community, single mothers, the youth that need guidance, to do events for the hood, and where I grew up. And man, it's really crazy how my life is now, from the life that I have for myself. God really changed my whole life around, and there's times where I'm just like, man, like, God, am I still on the right path? And he proves it over and over and over again, so my walk with God from moving back home, and God changing my perspective and God talking to me, it has been very fruitful, and I've learned a lot, and I'm growing in my faith, and I'm really walking into my purpose and walking in purpose, just trying to impact people. And I feel like what God has been showing me through this walk is life isn't just about me. Life is about the people around me. you know, and also just learning that, you know, I'm put on this earth to be a role model, a guide, a light, a father figure, a husband, a mentor. You know, I want to be the thing that a lot of people didn't have growing up, and I want to be able to push people towards Jesus and help them really get to know who God is, you know. So life for me, you know, isn't what I expected it to be, but I'm so happy God changed it, because I was a very self-centered and selfish person in life before God, you know, stepped in and intervened, you know. And when he closed all those doors, originally I thought that God wasn't on my side, or God didn't hear my prayers, but God was showing me that he's got everything, you know, in control. So yeah, that's my testimony. That's what I've been up to, you know, still teaching, still mentoring kids, and running my organization, and yeah, just trying to help my family, my girlfriend, and really just do what God has called me to do, which is to be a light on this earth and help make more disciples and to bring light to the darkness of the world, you know. So for those that knew me growing up, like, they look at me now and they're just like, man, this guy's really changed, you know. And if you knew me even in college, like I would just say 2.5, 3 years ago till now, my life is drastically different. And when I tell you this wasn't a part of my plans, you know, like, basketball was all I had set out for me, you know. Like, before I moved back here, I had an apartment that I was looking at. I accepted a job offer, and I had everything set up. I had a car, you know, and I came back home to celebrate my graduation, because of COVID, my family couldn't come up for graduation. We didn't even have an in-person graduation. And I felt the Lord telling me to stay as I came to visit. It was literally, I just came for a visit. And I felt God saying, like, this is where you need to be. And I was so frustrated. I'm like, God, I do not want to be back in Florida. You know, I feel like I'm just not going to grow here. I feel like I did my time here, and that was it. But God was just like, this is where I need you to be. So wrestling with God and really just listening to the call that he had on my life, I did, you know, and it's been the best decision that I ever made. So that's just part of my testimony, and I hope that you guys, you know, can relate to it and find fruit in it. But yeah, that is the end of our first episode back from our long hiatus. But I want you guys to know that this thing is going to be consistent. We're going to be back. I want you guys to follow the YouTube, follow the Instagram, get us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I want you guys to tune in every week. You guys can hear what God is doing, the different topics, the different questions that we have in life. And I want you guys to know that, you know, I'm here for you guys. You know, you guys can lean on me, and I'll lean on you guys. And yeah, we can lean into this community. But yeah, that's the end of our episode.